Level Mod, the entry officer. You log into a portal. A list of cities appears. Lagos, Chennai, Bratislava, Kinshasa. There is no box to type your preference into. Not really. You can rank them. The department decides. You just finished 6 weeks of training at a building in Washington everyone calls Foggy Bottom. You learned cable formatting. You learned protocol. Nobody taught you how to want a posting you've never heard of. Here is what nobody says out loud during orientation. Worldwide availability isn't a slogan. It's a legal condition of your employment. You must be willing to go anywhere. War zone, disease zone, somewhere with no name you recognize. Refuse a posting without an acceptable reason and your career can end before it starts. Your first tour isn't even something you bid on properly. It's assigned. Direct. The department places you and you go. You tell yourself this is temporary, a rite of passage, the price of the first rung. Somewhere above you, career officers who did this exact thing 20 years ago are still doing versions of it. Not the same list, the same absence of choice. You accept the offer. You always do. There's no version of this career where you don't. 3 weeks later, you're standing in an airport with 2 suitcases and a shipping label for the rest of your life. Addressed to a city you had to look up. You will spend the next 30 years being moved like this. Some tours you'll request. Most, in one way or another, will be decided for you, dressed up as a choice. The department already knows where you're going. You just don't, yet. Level high, the Vice Consul. The line starts before sunrise. By 8, it wraps around the block outside the consulate gate. You sit behind reinforced glass with a stack of folders taller than your coffee cup. This is your first real power. Not theoretical, not someday, today, right now. You can look at a stranger's documents and decide whether their life changes. A woman slides her passport through the slot. Wedding invitation, bank statement, photos of grandchildren she's never met in person. You have 90 seconds, officially, less in practice. You stamp it, approved or denied. Either way, the stamp lands the same, flat, final. No appeal, not really, not one that moves fast enough to matter to her. You will do this 200 times before lunch. By the time you close the window, you won't remember her face. You'll remember the stamp. The sound of it, the weight. Here's what the job doesn't advertise. You hold more unilateral power over an individual life at this rank than you likely ever will again deeper into your career. Surrounded by more rules, more oversight, more people above you. The floor of this system hands you a strange kind of ceiling. And still you are, by every internal measure, near the bottom. You cannot choose your own next post any more freely than you could choose this one. You decide who gets to enter a country. You do not decide where you get to live. You just learned what power feels like inside this system. It is smaller than you imagined, and it is not yours to keep. Level Ba, the third secretary. Midnight, and a cable goes out. You wrote it. Your name is nowhere on it. This is the house style. Whatever you observe, a minister's private comment, a shift in a foreign ministry's tone, a rumor from a source who trusts you and no one else in the building, gets folded into a single collective voice. The cable reads like it was written by the embassy itself, not by you, at your desk, past midnight, alone. Cables like yours can travel all the way to the Secretary of State's desk. Historians who've studied the era note it happened even during the chaos of full evacuations. One officer's diary from a legation in Warsaw records coordinating the movement of, in his words, at least 1,000 Americans. Most of them there only to convince relatives to live with them. Whoever wrote that account is remembered. Most cable authors are not. You tell yourself the institution is the point, not you. Some days you believe it. Other days you notice, the analysis was yours. The judgment call was yours. The credit belongs to a building. You start keeping a private file, just for yourself. A copy of your best cables. The ones that mattered. The ones nobody will ever trace back to your keyboard. It isn't for your resume. There's nowhere official this kind of proof goes. Your signature exists. It's just not the one anyone reads. Your words will travel farther than your name ever will. Level Bo, the first secretary. A moving crew carries the same wooden crates out of your house for the 3rd time in 6 years. Your child is memorizing a new school uniform color before the plane has even landed. You're managing something real now. An economic portfolio, a handful of locally hired staff who know the country better than you'll ever know it, a section of the embassy that depends on you not falling apart. Your family is the part of this system nobody officially tracks. There is no line item for what a spouse gives up, the license they can't transfer, the job they can't hold from 3 time zones away, the friendships that don't survive the 8-hour flight home. The department's own family liaison office will tell you, if you ask directly, that the strain is real. It keeps no official count of the marriages that don't make it through a full rotation cycle. Nobody does. You used to think the sacrifice would be visible somewhere, a note in a file, a line at a ceremony. It isn't. The sacrifice just becomes background noise, the ordinary cost of doing this job, absorbed and unspoken. Your career is growing in a straight, visible, promotable line. Something else, back home, in the space where a life outside this system used to sit, is quietly shrinking. You can feel it shrink. You keep packing anyway. Level NAM, the counselor. You check a percentage on your pay stub the same week you refill a malaria prophylaxis prescription. 15%, 25%, 35% if the country you're in has fully come apart. This rank sits at the edge of the senior foreign service, roughly equivalent, in the military's language, to a brigadier general. You run a section, you brief the ambassador directly, and you are, for the first time, somewhere the government officially classifies as dangerous. The math is specific, and it is stranger than it sounds. Danger pay for political violence, 15, 25, or 35% of your salary. Hardship pay, separately, for posts with brutal living conditions, up to another 35%. You'd expect the two to stack. They don't. Combined, by regulation, the total is capped at 35%, whichever is higher, not both together. At one point, by a government accounting, the department listed 21 postings as unaccompanied, over 700 positions where the rules simply forbid your family from coming with you at all. You didn't choose this posting because it was safe. Nothing at your rank gets chosen for that reason anymore. You chose it because it was the next rung. And the next rung was here, in a country where your own government caps how much it's willing to say your life is worth. The system has priced your risk. The price has a ceiling. Level set, the minister counselor. 11 at night and you're finishing a policy paper someone else will present tomorrow. Not because you lack the rank to present it yourself, because that isn't how the next rotation works. Not yet. You are, on paper, near the top of the entire structure below the senior foreign service ceiling, one step from deputy chief of mission, the unofficial front runner every time that job opens somewhere in the system. And still, almost no one outside this building could tell you your title exists. There's an older, darker version of this invisibility. Between 1945 and 1962, diplomatic careers, the officers whose entire job was physically carrying classified pouches between postings, died in plane crashes doing it. Their names weren't memorialized for decades. Vital to the machine, invisible to everyone standing outside it. You're not risking your life carrying a locked pouch, but the shape is familiar. Essential work, someone else's byline. You sign off on the paper, someone else's name goes on the cover page tomorrow morning. You are closer to the top than 99% of the people who started this career alongside you. The top still doesn't know your name. Level by the Deputy Chief of Mission. 11:30 and you're finalizing a briefing book. Every fact in it is yours. Every judgment call is yours. Tomorrow's cover page will carry someone else's name and someone else's photograph. This is the job insiders quietly call the embassy's real chief operating officer. You run daily operations, you manage the staff, you handle the crises that never reach the news because you handled them before they could. The title ambassador belongs to someone else. That's not a technicality here. It's the entire architecture of the rank above you. You can run an embassy for years, capably, invisibly, and never once hold a title that makes any of it legible to the outside world. You tell people at dinner parties back home what you do, and you watch them wait for you to say the word they're expecting. You don't say it. It isn't yours to say. You are standing right below the summit of this entire structure. The last step, it turns out, was never a step you could take on your own. Level Tampo, the ambassador. Somewhere in Washington, a man is sworn in. 18 months ago, he was writing checks to a presidential campaign from a private office that had nothing to do with foreign policy. Today, he reads a security briefing written by career officers who have spent a decade in the region he now represents. Here is the number, and it deserves context before the shock of it lands. Across administrations since Gerald Ford, the historical average holds fairly steady. Roughly 68% of U.S. ambassadors have been career foreign service officers, 32% political appointees. That's the baseline. That's the system working close to as designed across both parties for half a century. Under the current administration, according to non-partisan tracking published this month, that ratio has inverted almost completely. Only Tan Fai Chin Fancham of ambassadors are career officers. Shimi Motfai Mot Fancham are political appointees, a modern era record. It isn't distributed evenly either. Close to 80% of ambassadorships in Western Europe and the Caribbean go to political appointees. Central Asia, by contrast, has never once had a non-career ambassador. You climbed 7 floors to get here. Entry officer, vice consul, third secretary, first secretary, counselor, minister counselor, deputy chief of mission. Every one of them built on the last. On exams and rotations and postings you didn't choose. 9 out of 10 people sitting in this chair this year never stood on a single one of those floors. Level Ching, the career minister. There's a small ceremony, no press, a rank most people outside this building have never heard spoken aloud, roughly equivalent to a lieutenant general, reserved for decades of service that never waver. This is as far as pure competence, alone, unaided by anything outside the exam system, can take a person in this career. It is the second highest rank the foreign service has ever created. You are, by any internal measure, one of the most capable diplomats your government has ever produced. And the chair one rank below yours on the org chart, the one with the title everyone outside this building actually recognizes, went, this year, to someone 18 months removed from private life. You don't say this bitterly. You've stopped expecting the math to make sense. You just notice it, the way you'd notice weather. This is as far as skill alone can carry you. Level Mier, the career ambassador. A ceremony at the State Department. The president confers a rank that, since Congress created it in Milyan Chinchamna Milam, has been held by only 62 people in the entire history of the foreign service. There was a year, the year Hainin, when only 3 people alive held it at all. You are addressed, for the rest of your life, as Her Excellency or His Excellency. The title carries no additional administrative power. It is, in the most literal sense available in this system, an honor and nothing else. You think, for a moment, about Milyan Tamcham Tamilam. Moses A. Hopkins was born enslaved. He taught himself to read at 20. That year, he was appointed United States Ambassador to Liberia, the top of a ladder that in his lifetime barely existed, yet for someone like him. He died at his post from tropical disease less than a year later. His name sat in a consular death record for over a century before anyone went looking for it again. You think about September of Haining from Chamuihai. Ambassador Chris Stevens, a career diplomat who had climbed every rung this system offers, was killed in an attack on the diplomatic compound in Benghazi, the 8th American ambassador in history to die while serving. The danger pay tables he qualified for were the same tables that priced the risk of a counselor 3 ranks below him. You signed for this rank. Somewhere in a filing system, in a portal you logged into decades ago, a version of you once clicked a button on a list of cities you'd never heard of, with no box to type a preference into. The signature was always the same motion. It never meant the same thing twice. The entry officer signs a form that decides nothing. The career ambassador signs one that decides almost everything, and still isn't the top. Between them, 30 years, 100 stamps, and one ladder that was always real. Neither of you was ever fully free, one because the system chose for you, the other because it stopped meeting to. A stamp comes down, denied. The applicant turns and walks away. You reach for the next of 200 folders before lunch. You are a foreign service officer, one of roughly 8,000 people carrying America's word to over 270 embassies worldwide. In Hangin Kung Chamuihai, a man who reached the very top of this ladder, Ambassador Chris Stevens, was killed at his post in Benghazi. This year, 9 out of 10 people sitting in the chair he once held never climbed a single rung to get there. By the end, you'll understand exactly why and what it costs in danger pay, in marriages, in anonymity, to climb a ladder that may not lead where you think it does.